The tadpoles in this tank are going through one of the biggest changes they're ever going to do. That means we've got some work to do. If we take a close look, we can see that we can't really call this a tadpole anymore. Not only does it have large back legs, but its front legs have emerged too. It still has a long tail, but this will shrink over the next day or two as it gets absorbed back into the little froglet's body. Some people think that the tails fall off, but this is not true. The froglet will now stop feeding and it uses the tail as a source of energy while it shrinks. But my main concern at this point is that the froglet will now want to leave the water, and if it can't do so easily, it could drown. So now that the frogs are starting to get their front legs, they need to come out of that tank. There's nowhere for them to get out of the water in the way that I've got this one set up. So I've been shopping. I've bought myself another tank exactly the same as the one that we've got, and I've also got myself some substrate and some moss. These things I've never used before, so it'll be quite interesting to see how this works. Hopefully it'll be good. Yeah, let's dive in, let's get our tank set up, and let's see if we can make the frogs a good little home. So the first thing I bought is a pretty basic small kids aquarium. We don't need anything particularly big. It comes with a pump and gravel. This we don't need. I can get rid of the inserts as well. So what I do need to do is rinse this out, give it a bit of a clean. In previous years I've had the tank set up where I've had a slope between the gravel and the water. So the gravel, one half of the tank is outside of the water and it dips down and goes underneath the water. So as the tadpoles grew their legs and wanted to come out, they just came out naturally. This year I had the tank set up differently. I had it completely submerged in water. I'm not going to be able to lower the level of the water enough to be able to satisfy both the tadpoles and the frogs. So that's why I've got the second tank. It's here, give it a rinse out, should be ready to go. But this year I'm going to try something very different. There's not going to be any water in here, in the tank, for them to swim around in. I do have a small bowl, a water bowl, which has a slightly graded side so that I can actually climb out. So this will be full of water. That's about all the water we're going to have. But what I do have is a couple of different bags here which I bought from the pet shop. We have some orchid bark, which is a substrate, and we also have some moss. It's a live growing moss. These basically just hold the moisture in the tank. So it's going to be very wet. Now when frogs leave the water, they don't actually live in the ponds, in the water. They live in the sort of long grass and plants in and around the area. So all they need is sort of moisture, a sort of wet place to live, and that's what this moss will do, and the bark. Hopefully. I've never used it before, never tried it, it's going to be an experiment. So I'm going to get some of this in the tank and we'll see how it looks. So the instructions on the bag here just say to fill the aquarium with about 3 to 5 centimeters of this stuff, and you should spot clean it every day and replace the entire thing every 4 weeks. So yeah, we'll see how we get on with that. Okay, so I've got the bottom of the tank is covered with the bark. I've also placed the water bowl in there as well. There's no water in there just yet. But now I'm going to place some of the moss in there. So that's going to be placed around in sort of a few clumps. I'm not too sure what it's going to be like, so I've not opened the bag yet. So let's dive in, open up that bag, and we'll see what that looks like. I've opened the bag, and I can tell you that stuff stinks. Oh my god! But that should be fine. Oh wow, that is a really strong smell. It's quite sweet almost smell, but yeah, that's going to be interesting. You can see in there. So the directions do say to rinse this with water thoroughly before putting it in, so I'm just going to give this a bit of a clean. We don't need a huge amount of it. This is a resealable bag. This is obviously a living plant in there, so I'll give it a bit of a rinse, put it in the tank, and then we can seal this up and save it for next time. And I do have another bag over here which is completely sealed. Doesn't seem to have any kind of use by date or anything, so hopefully that'll just keep on living until we need to use it again. Alright, so I've put some water into the water bowl and I've placed some of the moss in the corner over there and just a little bit by the water bowl. That should be enough. That should give enough moisture. That's really what to do, is to give the frog somewhere to kind of hide, somewhere to sit, and it because the substrate here, this is quite absorbent. It holds its moisture content quite well, and the moss, obviously being a living plant, it holds moisture, it produces moisture. So we just need to keep this topped up with water. So like I'll probably need to get a spray bottle. I'm sure I've got one somewhere. We can just mist them with water sort of every day, make sure it gets nice and moist, nice and wet in there, and hopefully that'll be a lovely little place to keep our frogs. They're not going to be quite as easy to see as they were last year because we had the white gravel and they were really nice and easy to see, but I think this will be a slightly more natural habitat for them. I'm really hoping that this is going to work this year. One problem we do have is there's no lid. Now I do have a lid, it did come with one, but because it's a fish tank designed for putting in pumps and things, so we have gaps where you can place in things like your filters and your pumps and all the electrical cables and things that you need to power all those things you might want for a fish tank. That's no good because the frogs will be very good at climbing up this glass. They're very good at escaping. So I know last year we kind of blocked up some of the holes. We'll probably have to do the same thing this year, but we don't need to worry about that just too yet, because they should be okay for a little while. But I think it's about time to see whether we can get our first froggy in there. Right, so I've got the new tank in its new position. The old tank is here. Now comes the difficult part, trying to catch the ones with legs, getting them out of there and putting them in there. Wish me luck.
I needed both my hands to catch them, so I had to put the camera down. But here are the first two froglets in their new home. You can see that now they can leave the water easily. They immediately climbed out and sat on the edge of the water bowl. We'll leave them for a day or two until their tails have been fully absorbed, and then we can feed them.
So it's a few days later and we now have 3 little frogs in this tank, and over the last couple of days their tails have shrunk and they now, I think they're going to need feeding. Some of them are looking quite thin, so they're definitely in need of some food. Now I know my wife always complains that I don't mow the grass often enough, but there are benefits. Let's go and have a look. So I know that the weeds can look unsightly and these definitely need cutting down, but for our purposes today are absolutely perfect, because right here, if you can see on this stem here, it's infested with aphids, and a lot of these weeds are infested with aphids. There's quite a few about, and aphids are a perfect food for frogs at the first stage because they need something extremely small to be able to eat. Now of course the frogs will only eat live food that is moving, so you have to get something that moves, that's alive, and these aphids right here are absolutely perfect. All I'm going to do is take the stem and I'm going to try break it off. Probably lost the whole load just doing that. Probably should use some scissors, that might be a better idea. But there we go, so that is what we're going to do. We can stick that in our tank and then hopefully they're just going to pick them off and eat them up.
That's all I have for you this week, but over the next few days these little froglets will be getting bigger and we may have more tadpoles develop enough to join them. I hope you've enjoyed the video and come back next time to check in on these little guys. Goodbye.